Hello, 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 my fellow community of African immigrants, African Americans, and all fighters of justice. We are all going through a season in time when our consciousness has to be, like Americans say, woke. I feel woke today. I am Pamela Anchang. I'm the editor and founder of the Immigrant magazine since over 15 years now. I normally don't do monologues, but this is not a monologue. This is a response that I have to give to something that has drawn my attention. Have you seen the video from Breitbart News capturing an African woman berating the Black Lives Movement, berating my fellow African American community, berating a people who have suffered oppression for over 400 years? The Reverend Al Sharpton said 401 years and counting. And my fellow African sister was on Breitbart News. Her name, Miss Nestride Yumga. She was on Breitbart News in front of the White House when the peaceful protesters were fighting and pleading for justice for a fellow human being, George Floyd, among so many. I call him a human being because, yes, he's a black brother, but he was first a human being. George Floyd lost his life at the hands of the lynching of 3 or 4 ex-Minnesota police officers. And before his family could lay him to rest, my African sister was standing where people were hurt, in pain, fighting for justice. And she stood there and berated them. And mind you, while she did all this, other people from different races, a white woman, Latinos, everybody tried to calm her down, to reason with her. And she wouldn't listen. My brothers and sisters, I got so many calls about this. The first call that came in was a video. It was forwarded to me. And I decided I wasn't going to pay it any attention. I was just going to ignore it and not give it much energy, because I feel that when you share it, you're only duplicating. So I thought it would just die. And then I got another message. Please come to our rescue. A Cameroonian female is disgracing us at the protest rally. Please say something. Like I said, I don't do monologues. But you know what I said to myself? I always believe that if you talk the talk, you gotta walk it. I've always claimed silence is complicity. I think the former vice president said, I think Joe Biden or someone else, but many have said it, that actually silence is deadly. I agree. So I'm not sitting here to have a moment. I'm sitting here because when you've been given a pulpit, when you've been given a responsibility, you don't do it only when it's good. I'm in the habit of telling beautiful stories about immigrant success. But today, it's a consciousness. I'm a black woman. I'm a black mother. I'm a black child. And I feel for the family of George Floyd. For the 8 minutes. And by the way, it wasn't just 8 minutes, even though we say 8 minutes. He was tortured for more than 8 minutes, but those are the 8 minutes that mattered for him to live or die. He pleaded for his life. He said, "Mama," and I'm a mother. And even though his mom is of late, George called for Mama. Brothers and sisters, imagine the shame you feel when one of yours does something so horrendous. You want the air to open and swallow you. You want to hide, you can't. That's what Nestride Yumga did in front of the White House. All Africans who have consciousness, because not all of them do, all Africans, all people with consciousness who are woke. They have been so ashamed. And I said, this shame is not mine. It will rest with you, Nestride. So please, let me help you, my sister. This is not a moment for me. I don't want to berate you. I don't know you. But I know that when you stood there and you said, I'm from Africa, God help me. I didn't know what to do. So the shame that I feel and that my people feel and the hurt that my African American community feels, I want us to address it today. And it's a shame that Breitbart would use you to foster their agenda, to foster antagonism between brothers and sisters. It's like a Cain and Abel story for those who read the Bible. That you would turn against your own people and call the Black Lives Movement a scam. You know where I come from in Africa, where you're from, Nestride, we don't wash our dirty linen in public. So let's say you did not like what the Black Lives Movement is about. Why don't you reach out to them and talk to them? Why go out there and talk about black on black crime? That is not what this is about, sister. This is about the lynching, the oppression of a people. George Floyd is gone. He's not feeling any more pain. But there are lives to be saved, sister. So when they're fighting, he's gone. He's lost his life. He gave his life unwittingly. He gave his life like many others who did it consciously. You know, when you go to the armed forces, you know you can die. When you're a civil rights leader, you know you could lose your life. He didn't seek that. But today, he's a martyr. Let's just start by respecting that. So I want to start even by extending condolences to his family, his children. When I saw that your video on Breitbart was counting almost 300,000 views, that's why I had to get up to say something to those who will listen and to those who are being fed false knowledge about the Black movement. I've had friends tell me, all lives matter. And I said, but right now, it's the Black lives that matter. Because right now, it's the Black people that are being oppressed. So, my deepest condolences to George's family, to all the victims of police brutality, to all Black victims, male and female, of oppression, of racism, who have lost their lives. But I want to give gratitude also to African Americans for all they have endured for over 401 years, so that Nestride could speak up, to live, to have that moment where she could berate the same people on whose shoulders she stands. Nestride, I don't want to make this about you, but I want you to be a vehicle of education. Because I believe that if you had just done your homework, just a little bit, you might have thought differently and said something else. Because where we come from Mama Africa, we don't talk like that. We don't wash our dirty linen in public. So I want to apologize for this ignorance and let you know, Nestride, that more than 12.5 million people were documented between the 17th and 19th centuries as having been enslaved or lost their lives or survived. But all of that number should be more, because I don't know who was keeping the census of that. They lost their lives. So when you talk about not being oppressed, sister, there's a new oppression. It doesn't have to be in chains. You don't have to be in chains to be oppressed. You can be oppressed here, and I think right now, most of us are oppressed right here. I think about the fact that when I wake up every day, even doing what I do, I can't tell you how many times I've thought that if I were white, I will be on some major platform, but I'm not. So let's talk about how our people have been oppressed. Nestride. So maybe I'm not an expert in this. I'm an immigrant from Africa, from Cameroon, the country that everybody says you're from. I can't throw you. You can throw away the water. You can throw away the gourd or the calabash, as we say if a child does something wrong. So let's talk about it. Employment. Statistics show that African Americans or black people, they're the last to be hired and the first to be fired. Maybe you've heard it. Please find out. How do you think a community can sustain financially without resources? So when you talk about crime, when you talk about, oh, they're lazy, I heard you say that. Go and get a job. My sister, please educate yourself. When you think about building wealth without a steady or rewarding employment, when you think about other communities, the Jews, for example, I understand they've been compensated at some point. But right now it's coming to me that African Americans, it's a story about land and a mule or something. You know, I'm sure I'll get some calls. Please let me know. They have never been rewarded for slavery, for having been enslaved. So while others are ahead, it's like starting a race and someone is already 10 miles ahead and you're expected to catch up. And you're not given the tools. And you're asked to pull yourself by your bootstraps, but you have no boots to pull, to have straps, let alone pull them up. And you talk about wealth, and you talk about stop being lazy. My sister, please, we'll talk about education. Most immigrants, African immigrants that come here, are educated. You have a master's degree. And I'm actually surprised that I thought college education is supposed to create a foundation for you to be able to see things beyond, you know, be able to decipher for yourself. Well, we don't know everything. I don't either. So maybe this is one. But let me tell you something. I have children. I don't know if you have children, but I couldn't tell you how many times my children came home crying. Someone called them a name. Someone laughed at their name. Someone called them to the office for an offense that maybe another white child may have done. And they were chastised more than that white child. And I knew. At first, I didn't get it. You know, I've always been told that there's racism, and I never got it. It is subtle. Someone could be racist next to you and you wouldn't know because you don't know the clues. There's a code. There is a code. So when you think of the fact that even as early as preschool, statistics show that while black children constitute 18% of preschoolers suspended than white students, with even when their infractions are similar. Overall, the black students represent only 16%, but then there are 18% more that get in trouble. And most of them, by the time they reach the teenage or become adults, they will be incarcerated. Lack of the right kind of schooling, because you know how I don't know if you have children, but you go to school in your own community, in your own county. You can go beyond your district. So if you're not fortunate to be in a district where schools are performing well, then no luck. Then not to mention if your parents are unemployed, not to mention if the father is incarcerated. Nestride, you have a master's degree. How do you expect these children to thrive? How do you? And once these children are in the justice system, it opens up the door for more crime. They come out, they get back in, and the vicious cycle continues. And think about it. It's still in the criminal justice system. Policing. How many times have you heard that being pulled over by a cop, driving while black, it's a whole situation. At first I didn't know. I'm kind of like, if I got everything right, my papers are right, my driving, I shouldn't be in trouble. But how many times have you heard, I've seen grown folks cry at being pulled over and mistreated. And I've heard white people say that they've never experienced that. So when we talk about all these things, sister, please do your homework. Black males make up 13% of the population, and they represent 40% of the prison population. Please let that sit. How are you 13% of the population and 40% incarcerated? That's a topic that we will have to explore at length. Right now, I want us to focus on just getting you the facts. So before you speak up, sister, and anybody else, the Nestrides out there, please, I am not sitting here to berate anyone. I just want us to be enlightened. I had to read. I heard Jane Fonda on one of the programs on one of the networks say that she too had not been aware of the disparities as much as they have been, even though she's an activist. So don't think you're alone. There are many of us. We're learning every day. So don't feel bad. Now let's talk even about housing. Studies have shown that people of color are told about and shown fewer homes than their counterparts that are whites, because nobody wants the black family next door. Oh, how many times have you heard people say, oh, I live in a white neighborhood. It's like a badge of honor. I live in a black neighborhood. So if you live in a white neighborhood, it means you've arrived. So you could be living in a ghetto white neighborhood, you've arrived. So white privilege. And guess what? Black ownership of homes is getting lower and lower. It's 42% for blacks and 72% for white people. Listen, I just want to give you just the tidbits. You have a master's degree. You can go home and read up for yourself. Let's talk about surveillance. How many times have you heard black people say they were followed while in a store? You go shopping and there's someone looming over you. You know, at first I thought they wanted to be helpful. I've experienced it before. I've been to a store smiling at these folks like, hey, thank you. And then later realized that they really didn't ask me a question. Like, ma'am, do you need any help? And so then later, I said, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, why was that person? You know what, now I'm woke. So now when I see somebody looming, can you imagine? I have to start acting like I didn't touch anything. It's like something that just comes over you. You know? So how many times have you experienced that? You've said you're not oppressed. You said, look at me, I'm not oppressed. Do I look oppressed? Like I said, sometimes these things are subtle. So when you talk about the Black Lives Movement, these are the things they're fighting for. If we don't handle the little things, we will all perish. Talk about healthcare. Have you heard about something called unconscious bias? Unconscious racial bias. Sometimes doctors don't give you the right care because you are black. So if you're lucky to be able to maybe visit Cedars-Sinai and you are a certain maybe economic status, you might. But trust me, when you walk in there, before they get to know that you're Dr. so-and-so or you have a master's in such and such, all they see is your blackness. A study, in fact, in 2012, found that the majority of doctors do have unconscious racial bias when it comes to black patients. You can verify that for yourself. I don't know if you're in the healthcare industry. I forgot what you mentioned, your profession. There is too much to be said on this subject matter, but I'm going to say this to you. I hate to have to say that you brought me shame, because I expect someone like you to know better. But we don't always do. But I'm reminded, sadly though, that you're not alone. But we have to speak up. We have to try to quell the voices, because I have some of them as my friends. This has been a very difficult time for me, because I've had to figure out if certain people are my friends or not. Because while people are out there giving their lives, putting their lives on the line for justice, some people, rather than just shut up, are there to condemn and berate people that are fighting for justice. People need leadership. I applaud the Black Lives Matter for giving leadership. The fact that some might go out there looting, the looters will loot, the protesters will protest. So I don't want us to be distracted. Some people sit on the sidelines. My own child told me, said, Mom, I have this feeling that Black parents, African parents, he said, do not understand what African Americans go through. They don't understand the Black Lives Movement. When he said that to me, because every time there's a protest march, we sit at home, most of us, not even understanding. It's one thing that you don't understand, but it's another thing to speak up on something you don't understand. If you don't understand, ask. Find out what it's about. The saddest part about it is you stood in front of the White House and called it your White House and forgot that our ancestors, the slave ancestors, built that White House. Yes, it's yours. But how many of yours have actually sat there and lived in it? How many? We've been lucky to have President Barack Obama. But how many presidents has the United States had, and how many Black people have succeeded in being at the helm of the White House? How many, Nestride? And not forgetting that just recently, the current occupant of that White House called where you come from an S-hole country, or S-hole continent, or where we come from, whatever he called us. And that you are, in case you don't know it, you are oppressed as well. I'm not sure that your entire family from Cameroon, or whatever African country you're from, I'm not sure they're all able to be here. I'm not sure that you realize that this oppression goes beyond the United States, and that if your country were not that S-hole that has been described by the occupant of the White House, you probably wouldn't be here. You would be there thriving. I'd rather be home in Cameroon with my extended family. But I'm here because thanks to colonialism, thanks to apartheid, thanks to neo-colonialism, thanks to slavery, and it goes on and on. The African continent and its people all over the world, the African continent and its diaspora has been sat on. The Reverend Al Sharpton said today, and others have said, that the racism has been like Officer Chauvin's knee on the necks of Black folks. They have sat on our necks through colonialism. They have sat on our necks through apartheid. They have sat on our necks and continue to do that today through neo-colonialism. And right now in the United States, through the systemic injustice that people of African descent face. Brazil, not different. I mean, we don't want to go Cuba, name it. Wherever you find people of our hue, we have faced it and we continue. So my sister, before you speak up, please do your homework. I would not like to call you out like this. Like I said, wash your dirty linen in public, but you spoke up in public. And I have to speak up, just in case someone thinks that you are a reflection of who I am as an African or a Cameroonian woman. You don't represent me. But again, this is not about you. This is about something deeper. That some people from Africa are elitist and think that they are different from the African American community. And shame again on Breitbart for fomenting this discord between Africans and African Americans. I have had conversations with Africans and African Americans, and some have expressed that Africans do not appreciate their sacrifice. I'm here to tell you, my brothers and sisters, that we do appreciate your sacrifice. People like Nestride may make you feel that way. That's why I'm wearing this dress today. It's my African dress, to let you know that this sister from Africa, I see you. And I'm not oblivious to the sacrifices that you made for apartheid to become history in South Africa. I'm not oblivious to that. I'm not oblivious to the fact that there are African Americans right now in Ghana, in Senegal, in Cameroon, in South Africa, receiving the continent as their home. For you to say you are lazy, go get a job, go fight against black on black crime in Chicago and all whatnot, with so much conviction. Conviction about ignorance is deadly, you know? But I'm gonna tell you this, Nestride. The agenda that Breitbart is trying to use you for is dead on arrival. Because I'm just one face that you will see. We will not let it happen. It's dead on arrival. For your few minutes of fame, you chose to rat out your own people. The agenda for racism, for bigotry, for xenophobia between people of African descent is dead on arrival. Message to Breitbart. We will not accept it. Nestride will not be your spokesperson because she'll come back home. She will hear what I have to say to her and she will find out. She will figure it out for herself. Nestride, though, you have no right to deny the African American community their right to mourn, their right to lament the suffering that they've endured for over 401 years, or their right to demand justice for their murdered children. How dare you? Black Lives Matter. Yes, they do matter. And the Black Lives Matter movement matters. That movement matters. We need it. Right now, we are seeking justice for the late George Floyd. As a black woman and mother, I worry for my children. I worry for my husband. I worry for my brothers. I even worry for myself every single day. Your lack of compassion for his children, for his family, for the black community, for humanity in general. What did you think? How could you be focused on the Black Lives Matter and their actions instead of the pain and suffering that George endured and that his family endured? How could you not feel that? How would you use this as an opportunity to exploit their pain for a few minutes of celebrity? Yeah, you might even end up having 1 million views or more. This video I'm making may not even get 200 views. I really don't care. But if I change one person's mindset, if I'm able to get through to one child, I would have done my job. I'll tell you what though, this shame is not for my people though. It's not for me. It rests with you and yours. I don't know where you're from though. You can only be a tool if you choose to be a tool for this nefarious agenda that will destroy your own people. I want you to look to the journeys of great leaders like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela, and the list goes on and on and on. And today is the George Floyds and all those who have lost their lives because of racism and bigotry. I want you to look to them and think for yourself that, ask yourself, does the Black Lives Matter movement have a place? As a matter of fact, I want you to know that when these brave soldiers fought for your freedoms, for your civil liberties, at the time they did, they were looked upon as not valid. They were shunned, and some of them paid dearly with their lives. They were not respected. Just like George Floyd. Some people are going on and on about, oh, he was a this, he was a that. I don't care. He deserves the same justice that white folks get when they have issues. Whatever it was or it is, for every black young man or female that has lost their lives or been treated with disrespect, they all deserve equal justice, just like every white person deserves. They get, we get. No two systems for two different sets of people. Like the white lady asked you, I'm gonna end this right now. What are you fighting for? Nestride. The others are fighting for something. They asked you, they said, go. You said Chicago. They're like, let's go. You didn't go. What are you fighting for? I hope that upon reflection, you will find it in you to tender some apologies. I'm sure you know who. You're smart, you're an intelligent woman. But I would begin with George Floyd's family, the Black community, all the groups, including the Black Lives Matter, who keep the movement alive, and all those diverse people putting their lives out there in protest so that you, my sister, can sleep well at night. That you, my sister, can go home to your children. That if you have children, you don't have to worry that they can come home for sure. That you don't have to worry that when your children go out with other white friends, you have to tell your child, remember that you're not white. Remember, don't act like them because they are different. How do you think that makes a child feel when you break his spirit, when he goes out and he has to be more careful than the others? Because children will be children. We need equal opportunity for our children. We need a better America. And you are not on the right side of history, sis. Come back home. Call me if you feel inclined to. I love you still, but I want you to love everybody else that's fighting for justice. You are not on the right side. Thank you for taking the time.